Jack Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stared at the control panel. The red lights were flashing again. Something was wrong with the ship's communication system. He had been trying to contact Earth Command for the past hour, but all he got was static noise. "Sir, we're getting a distress signal," called out Lieutenant Amy Brooks from her station. Her voice was tense. "It's coming from the UES Harmony." Jack turned quickly. The Harmony was a diplomatic ship carrying 200 people to the Zephyrian homeworld. They were supposed to be working on a peace treaty. The mission was important for both humans and aliens. "Put it through," Jack ordered. The speaker crackled to life. Captain Lisa Carter's voice came through, but it was broken and filled with panic. "This is Captain Carter of the UES Harmony. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. The Zephyrians opened fire without warning. Our shields are down. We have multiple hull breaches." Jack felt his heart racing. "Lisa, this is Jack Morrison on the UES Guardian. We're 40 minutes out." "Hold on." "Jack, they're boarding us. They're not taking prisoners. They're killing everyone they find?" "Oh God, they're in the medical bay now. They're killing the wounded." The transmission cut to static. Jack stared at the speaker for a long moment. Lisa. Carter had been his friend since the academy. They had trained together, fought together, and saved each other's lives more times than he could count. Now she was dying and he was too far away to help. "All hands, battle stations," Jack announced over the ship's intercom. "We're going to maximum speed." The Guardian shook as the engines pushed beyond their normal limits. Jack's crew of 60 men and women worked frantically to squeeze every bit of speed from their patrol ship. They all knew what was at stake. The Harmony carried diplomats, scientists, and families. Innocent people who had believed they were safe. 20 minutes later they arrived at the coordinates. What they found made Jack's blood turn cold. The Harmony was still intact, but it was surrounded by 3 Zephyrian warships. The alien vessels were sleek and silver, with weapon ports that glowed with deadly energy. "Sir, I'm reading life signs aboard the Harmony," reported Sergeant Pete Adams, "but they're faint. Maybe 30 people still alive." Jack's jaw tightened. 30 out of 200. "Prepare the boarding pods. We're going in." "Sir, those are Zephyrian battle cruisers." "They outgun us 10 to 1, Amy warned. "I don't care if they outgun us 100 to 1. Our people are on that ship, and we're getting them out." The Guardian's small fighter escort launched first, drawing the attention of the alien warships. Jack led the boarding party himself, along with Pete Adams and 12 Marines. They wore full combat armor and carried the heaviest weapons the Guardian could supply. The boarding pod attached to the Harmony's hull with a metal clang. Jack was the first through the airlock. What he saw inside made him sick to his stomach. Bodies were everywhere. Men, women, and children floated in the zero gravity, their faces frozen in terror. The walls were covered in human blood. But this wasn't just a massacre. The Zephyrians had been selective about who they killed and who they kept alive. "Sir, over here," Pete called out. Jack followed the sound to the ship's medical bay. What he found there would haunt him for the rest of his life. The Zephyrians had set up makeshift laboratories. Human beings were strapped to tables, still alive but barely conscious. Alien scientists in white coats were conducting experiments on them. One of the victims was a young girl, maybe 10 years old. Her eyes were wide with terror as a Zephyrian scientist injected something into her arm. Jack didn't think. He didn't hesitate. He raised his weapon and shot the alien in the head. The other Zephyrians in the room turned toward him, their large black eyes showing surprise. They hadn't expected humans to fight back. They had expected easy victims. Jack proved them wrong. The battle for the Harmony lasted 2 hours. Jack and his team moved through the ship deck by deck, room by room. They found more torture chambers, more experiments, more evidence that the Zephyrians saw humans as nothing more than laboratory animals. Every alien they encountered died. Jack made sure of that. Some tried to surrender, holding up their thin arms and speaking in their chirping language. Jack shot them anyway. They had forfeited their right to mercy when they started cutting up human children. In the end, They rescued 28 people. Most were barely alive. The young girl from the medical bay died in Jack's arms as they carried her to safety. Her last words were asking for her mother, who was already dead, back aboard the Guardian. Jack stood in his quarters staring at the computer screen. He had spent the last hour going through the Harmony's data files. The Zephyrians had recorded everything. They had documented their experiments in detail. Like proud scientists sharing their discoveries, they had been testing human pain tolerance. They wanted to know how much suffering a human could endure before dying. They had been studying human reproduction, trying to understand how to breed humans in captivity. They had been examining human brains, cutting them open while the victims were still conscious. Jack had seen war before. He had fought pirates and smugglers. He had been in battles where good people died, but this was different. This was systematic. Cruelty. This was evil. Amy knocked on his door. "Sir, Admiral Sullivan is on the line. She wants a full report." Jack nodded and opened the communication channel. Admiral Kate Sullivan appeared on his screen. She was a tough woman in her 50s, with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had been Jack's mentor when he was a young officer. "Jack, what's the situation?" she asked. "The Harmony is secure, Admiral. We rescued 28 survivors out of 200. The Zephyrians were conducting medical experiments on the crew and passengers." Sullivan's face went pale. "Medical experiments?" "Torture experiments, Admiral. They were testing how much pain humans could endure. They were dissecting people while they were still alive. They recorded everything." There was a long silence. Finally, Sullivan spoke. "Jack, I need you to return to Earth immediately. The Galactic Council is already demanding answers. The Zephyrians are claiming this was all a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Jack's voice was quiet, but there was something dangerous in it. "Admiral, I have video evidence of them cutting open a 10-year-old girl. What part of that is a misunderstanding?" "Jack, I understand you're angry, but we need to handle this through proper diplomatic channels. The Zephyrian Empire is a major power. We can't afford to start a war over this." Jack stared at the screen for a long moment. "Admiral, with respect, they already started the war. They just didn't bother to tell us." After the call ended, Jack sat alone in his quarters. He thought about Lisa Carter, who had been his friend for 15 years. He thought about the little girl who had died in his arms. He thought about the 28 broken survivors who would never be the same. Most of all, he thought about the Zephyrian scientists who had recorded their experiments so carefully. They had been proud of their work. They had enjoyed causing pain to humans. They had seen his people as nothing more than interesting specimens to be studied and discarded. Jack made a decision that night. The Galactic Council could talk about diplomacy all they wanted. Earth Command could worry about starting wars. But Jack Morrison had seen what happened when humans trusted aliens to treat them with basic decency. He would make sure it never happened. Again. The next morning, Jack called his senior staff together. Pete Adams and Amy Brooks looked at him with concern. They had all seen the evidence. They all knew what the Zephyrians had done. "We're going to send a message," Jack announced. "Not to Earth Command, not to the Galactic Council. To every alien species in the galaxy. We're going to make sure they understand that humans are not victims. We're not laboratory animals. We're not going to sit quietly while they decide whether our lives have value." Pete nodded slowly. "What do you want us to do, sir?" Jack looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, aliens were probably planning their next move against humanity. They were probably assuming that humans would respond with strongly worded letters and diplomatic protests. They were wrong. "We're going to show them what happens when you hurt our people," Jack said quietly. "We're going to make them afraid." 3 weeks after the Harmony incident, Jack Morrison stood in the main briefing room of Earth Command. The room was packed with military officers, government officials, and news reporters. Everyone wanted to hear what had really happened in Zephyrian space. Admiral Kate Sullivan sat at the head of the table, looking tired and stressed. She had been dealing with angry messages from the Galactic Council for days. The alien governments were demanding that Jack be arrested and put on Trial for war crimes. Commander Morrison, Sullivan began. The Galactic Council claims you murdered 17 Zephyrian scientists who were conducting legitimate medical research. They say you attacked them without provocation. Jack stood up slowly. He had prepared for this moment. Admiral, I have something to show everyone. He activated the wall screen and began playing the video files recovered from the Harmony. The room fell silent as they watched the footage of Zephyrian scientists torturing human prisoners. A woman gasped when she saw the experiments being performed on children. One of the government officials looked like he was going to be sick. This is what the Galactic Council calls legitimate medical research, Jack said quietly. These aliens were not studying human biology. They were testing how much pain they could inflict before we died. They were breeding programs to create human slaves. They were dissecting living people for entertainment. The room erupted in angry voices. Several officers stood up and began shouting questions. The reporters were frantically taking notes. Jack waited for the noise to die down before continuing. For 3 years, human colonies have been reporting missing people, ships that never arrived at their destinations, families that vanished without a trace. We assumed it was pirates or equipment failures. We were wrong. The Zephyrians have been kidnapping our people for medical experiments. Senator Frank Davis, the head of the Defense Committee, leaned forward. Commander Morrison, even if this is true, you can't just execute prisoners. We have laws, we have procedures. Senator, those laws assume we're dealing with civilized beings. What I found on the Harmony was not civilized. It was systematic torture of innocent people, children, Senator. They were torturing children. Jack activated another video file. This one showed the Zephyrian scientists discussing their work. The alien voices were translated by computer. The young humans show more interesting reactions to pain, one scientist said. Their fear responses are particularly strong. We should acquire more subjects in this age range. The breeding experiments are also promising, another replied. We can produce a steady supply of test subjects if we establish proper facilities. The room was completely silent now. Even the reporters had stopped writing. Everyone was staring at the screen and horror. Jack turned off the video. These aliens see us as livestock. They see our children as breeding stock. They see our suffering as entertainment. The Galactic Council wants me to apologize for stopping them. Admiral Sullivan cleared her throat. Commander Morrison, what you found is certainly disturbing. But starting a war with the Zephyrian Empire is not the answer. We need to work through diplomatic channels. Admiral, respectfully, diplomacy is what got those people killed in the first place. The Zephyrians agreed to peace talks while they were kidnapping our people. They shook hands with our diplomats while they were cutting up our children. Jack walked to the center of the room. I propose a new approach. Every alien species in the galaxy needs to understand that attacking humans comes with a price. Not a diplomatic protest, not a formal complaint. A price that will make them think twice before touching one of our people. Senator Davis frowned. What kind of price? Complete destruction of their ability to harm us. If they attack a human colony, we destroy their military. If they kidnap our people, we destroy their government. If they torture our families, we destroy their entire civilization. The room exploded in arguments. Some officers supported Jack's approach, while others called it barbaric. The politicians worried about the cost of war. The reporters frantically recorded everything. Admiral Sullivan banged her hand on the table. Enough, Commander Morrison. What you're proposing is genocide. No, Admiral. Genocide is what they're planning for us. What I'm proposing is survival. We make the cost of attacking humanity so high that no alien species will ever consider it. Over the next week, Jack's ideas spread throughout human space. The video evidence from the Harmony was broadcast on every news channel. People who had never cared about military policy suddenly wanted to know what the government was going to do about alien threats. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of young men and women volunteered for military service. Defense contractors worked overtime to build new ships and weapons. Human colonies that had been defenseless began forming militias, but it was the missing persons reports that really changed public opinion. When families learned that their loved ones might have been kidnapped for alien experiments, anger turned to rage. Peaceful protests became violent demonstrations. Politicians who called for restraint were voted out of office. Jack found himself at the center of it all. Military officers sought him out for advice. Colony leaders asked him to speak at rallies. News reporters followed him everywhere he went. The alien response was swift and predictable. The Galactic Council demanded that Earth surrender Jack Morrison for trial. They threatened economic sanctions and military action. They claimed that humans were becoming a threat to galactic peace. Then the Krillian Syndicate made their move. The Krillians were a race of insect-like creatures who controlled several dozen star systems. They had been pushing the boundaries of human space for years, testing Earth's resolve with small raids and territorial disputes. They assumed that humans were too weak to fight back effectively. The attack on New Denver Colony was meant to be a show of force. The Krillians wanted to demonstrate that humans could be pushed around without consequences. They chose New Denver because it was a mining colony with only light defenses. The attack began at dawn. 12 Krillian warships appeared in the system and demanded that the colonists surrender all their mining equipment and pay tribute to the Syndicate. When the colonists refused, the aliens began bombing the surface. Jack Morrison was leading a patrol mission 2 systems away when the distress call came through. This time he didn't hesitate. He didn't wait for orders from Earth Command. He didn't ask permission from the Galactic Council. He simply acted. The Youth Guardian arrived at New Denver 6 hours after the attack began. Jack's ship was followed by 2 other patrol vessels that had joined his mission. Together they faced 12 enemy warships that outgunned them 5-1. The battle should have been a massacre. The Krillians had superior numbers, better weapons, and more experience, but they had made one critical mistake. They had underestimated human determination. Jack's tactics were simple and brutal. Instead of trying to match the aliens in a traditional space battle, he used his smaller ships to get close to the enemy vessels. His crews boarded the Krillian ships and fought them hand to hand. The aliens were not prepared for this kind of warfare. They expected humans to fight from a distance, using long-range weapons and defensive strategies. They did not expect humans to ram their ships into alien hulls and fight with knives and bare hands. Pete Adams led the boarding party onto the Krillian flagship. The alien crew tried to surrender when they realized they were losing. Pete shot them anyway. "This is for New Denver," he said into his radio, knowing that Jack was listening. The battle lasted 8 hours. When it ended, all 12 Krillian ships were destroyed or captured. The alien crews were dead. The colonists of New Denver were safe, but Jack Morrison was not finished. "Set course for the Krillian homeworld," he ordered. Amy Brooks looked at him with concern. "Sir, that's 3 systems away. We'll be deep in enemy territory." "Good. I want them to know we're coming." The journey to Krillia Prime took 2 days. Jack used that time to send a message to every human ship in the area. By the time he reached the Krillian homeworld, he had gathered 18 vessels. Most were patrol ships and cargo haulers, but they were crewed by angry humans who had heard about the experiments on the Harmony. The Krillian defense fleet was waiting for them. 40 ships protected the homeworld, including their newest battle cruisers. The aliens were confident that they could destroy the small human force. They were wrong. Jack Morrison had learned something important from the Harmony incident. Aliens expected humans to follow rules. They expected mercy, negotiation, and restraint. They did not expect total war. The Battle of Krillia Prime became the stuff of legend. Jack's forces did not try to capture territory or negotiate surrender. They systematically destroyed everything that could be used to threaten human space. Military bases, weapon factories, government buildings, communication centers. When the Krillian leaders tried to surrender, Jack refused to accept it. "You had your chance to show mercy at New Denver," he transmitted. "You chose to attack innocent people. Now you pay the price." The battle ended with the complete destruction of Krillian military power. Their government was gone. their ability to threaten human colonies was eliminated. The few surviving aliens fled to distant star systems. Spreading word of what had happened, Jack Morrison had kept his promise. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was the largest gathering in their history. Representatives from over 200 species filled the massive chamber on the neutral world of Concordia. The air was thick with tension and fear. Representative Veltar of the Aquarian Federation stood at the central podium. His blue skin was pale, and his gills fluttered nervously as he spoke. Fellow council members, we face a crisis unlike any in galactic history. The human known as Jack Morrison has become a threat to the established order. The chamber erupted in frightened voices. The Zephyrian ambassador, whose government had been demanding action since the Harmony incident, clicked his mandibles angrily. Morrison murdered 17 of our scientists. He destroyed our research facilities. He broadcast lies about our work to justify his crimes. Lies? The voice came from the human section. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood up, her face hard with anger. She was one of the survivors from the Harmony. I was there. I saw what your people did. I was strapped to one of your tables while you discussed how to make my death more painful. The Zephyrian ambassador's large black eyes showed no emotion. Human, you misunderstood our medical procedures. We were trying to help your people understand pain management. Elena laughed bitterly. Pain management? You were injecting acid into children to see how long they could scream. You were cutting people open while they were awake. You recorded everything like it was entertainment. Veltar raised his hand for silence. The specific details of the Harmony incident are not important now. What matters is that Morrison has since attacked and destroyed the entire Acrylian military. He refused to accept their surrender. He eliminated their government. This is not justice, this is genocide. Good, said Elena. Maybe now other species will think twice before attacking human colonies. The chamber fell silent. The alien representatives stared at her in shock. They had expected humans to be embarrassed by Morrison's actions, not proud of them. Commander 6R of the Reptilian Empire stood up. He was a massive creature with scales like armor and claws that could tear through steel. The human speaks truth. For too long, we have treated humans as weak prey. We have taken their resources, enslaved their people, and dismissed their protests. Morrison has shown us what happens when prey becomes predator. 6R, you cannot support this madness, protested the ethereal representative. The ethereals were a race of psychic beings who had controlled galactic politics for centuries. Morrison threatens the natural order. Some species are meant to rule, others to serve. The natural order? 6R's laugh was a deep rumble. The natural order is that the strong survive and the weak perish. Humans have proven they are strong. We have proven we are weak. More voices joined the argument. The hegemony of Shal insisted that humans were becoming too dangerous to be allowed to exist. The Cosmic Confederacy demanded that Earth be placed under galactic supervision. The Avian Collective suggested that human expansion should be limited to prevent future conflicts, but there were other voices too. The Canine Republic spoke of how humans had always treated their species with respect. The Feline Alliance mentioned the fair trade agreements they had with human colonies. Even some members of the Aquarian Federation admitted that humans had never attacked anyone without provocation. The debate raged for hours. Finally, Veltar called for order. We must face facts. Morrison has demonstrated that humans are capable of devastating military action. The question is, what do we do about it? We eliminate the threat, said the Zephyrian ambassador. We form a joint military force and destroy Morrison before he can cause more damage. And if we fail? Asked 6R. If Morrison defeats our combined fleets, what then? Do we face the wrath of an entire species that believes we tried to commit genocide? The chamber fell silent again. Nobody wanted to answer that question. While the Galactic Council debated, Jack Morrison was preparing for his next mission. Intelligence reports indicated that the hegemony of Shal was planning to enslave the agricultural world of Green Valley. The planet was home to 50,000 human farmers who had no military protection. Jack stood in the briefing room of his new ship. the UES Vengeance. The vessel was a prototype stealth destroyer, built specifically for his missions. It was faster than any alien ship, heavily armed and nearly invisible to enemy sensors. The hegemony has already sent advance teams to Green Valley, reported Amy Brooks, who had been promoted to his intelligence officer. They're disguised as traitors, but they're actually mapping the planet's defenses and identifying key targets. How long before their main fleet arrives? Jack asked. 3 days, maybe 4. They're bringing slave ships and processing equipment. They plan to capture the entire population. Jack nodded. The hegemony of Shao was known for their slave trade. They had been raiding weaker species for centuries, selling prisoners to anyone who would pay. They had never attacked human worlds before, but Morrison's actions had made them desperate to show strength. "Sir," said Pete Adams, "we've got volunteers coming in from all over human space. Word is spreading that you're planning another operation." And Jack looked at the communications board. Messages were flooding in from human ships throughout the galaxy. Military vessels, merchant captains, even civilian pilots were offering to join his mission. The legend of Jack Morrison was growing, and humans everywhere wanted to be part of it. "How many ships do we have?" he asked. 37 combat vessels plus support ships. Most are patrol boats and converted civilian craft, but they're all crewed by people who want to fight. Jack smiled grimly. It was more than enough. The hegemony would never expect such a large human force to appear at Green Valley. They were probably planning to face a few local defense ships at most. The journey to Green Valley took 2 days. Jack used that time to coordinate with his volunteer fleet and plan the battle. But he had another idea, something that would send an even stronger message to the galaxy. "Amy, I want you to hack into the hegemony's communication network. I want to broadcast our attack live to every alien government in the galaxy." Amy looked surprised. "Sir, that will reveal our military capabilities. Every species will see our tactics and weapons." "Good, I want them to see what happens when they threaten human civilians. I want them to understand that we don't just defend ourselves, we punish those who attack us." The hegemony fleet arrived at Green Valley right on schedule. 43 ships, including massive slave transports and processing vessels. Admiral Krath of the hegemony was confident that the humans would surrender without a fight. After all, they were just farmers. Jack Morrison's fleet was waiting for them. The battle began when the hegemony ships entered the system. They found themselves facing a human force that appeared out of nowhere, emerging from behind the planet's moons and asteroid fields. The aliens had walked into a carefully planned trap. "This is Jack Morrison," he broadcast on all frequencies. "You have come to enslave human people. You have made a mistake." Admiral Krath tried to respond, but Jack cut him off. "You will not surrender. You will not negotiate. You will not be taken prisoner. You have forfeited your right to mercy by threatening innocent families." The battle was broadcast live across the galaxy. Alien governments watched in horror as human ships systematically destroyed the hegemony fleet. The humans used tactics that the aliens had never seen before. They coordinated their attacks with deadly precision. They showed no mercy to enemies who tried to surrender, but the most shocking moment came when Jack Morrison personally boarded the hegemony flagship. The ship's internal cameras caught everything as he and his Marines fought their way to the bridge. When they reached Admiral Krath, the alien leader tried to surrender. "Please, human, we withdraw our claim to this world. We will leave your people alone." Jack's response was heard throughout the galaxy. "You should have thought of that before you brought slave ships to a human world." The execution of Admiral Krath was broadcast live. Every alien government saw Jack Morrison personally kill the hegemony leader. The message was clear. Attacking humans meant death. Not just for soldiers, but for the leaders who gave the orders. The aftermath of the Green Valley battle changed everything. The hegemony of Shao collapsed within weeks. Their slave trade network fell apart. Other species who had been their victims suddenly found themselves free, but the real change was in how aliens viewed humans. The species that had once dismissed Earth as a minor power now spoke of humans in whispers. Children were told stories about the human monsters who showed no mercy. Military commanders studied recordings of human tactics, trying to understand how they had become so dangerous. Commander 6R was one of the first to make his decision. 3 days after the Green Valley battle, he sent a message to Jack Morrison. Human leader, I am 6R of the Reptilian Empire. I have watched your battles. I have seen your strength. I request permission to join your forces. My people have been slaves to the ethereal collective for too long. Teach us to fight as you fight. The message was followed by others. Species that had been oppressed by the major powers began reaching out to humanity. They wanted to learn from Jack Morrison. They wanted to join his cause. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who had survived the Harmony incident, became the coordinator for these new alliances. Admiral Kevin Torres stared at the deployment orders on his desk. After months of debate, the Galactic Council had finally made their decision. They were going to stop Jack Morrison, and they had chosen Kevin to lead the mission. Kevin had known Jack since their days at the academy. They had been roommates, study partners, and friends. They had graduated together, served on the same ships, and saved each other's lives during the pirate wars. Now Kevin was being asked to hunt down and kill his oldest friend. Sir, the task force is ready, reported Captain Sally Newton, Kevin's chief of staff. We have ships from 12 different species. 200 vessels in total. It's the largest military force ever assembled, Kevin nodded. The fleet was impressive. Zephyrian battle cruisers, ethereal mine ships, Aquarian deep space destroyers, and vessels from 9 other species. Each government had contributed their best ships and most experienced crews. What about our human ships? Kevin asked. 60 vessels from Earth Command. Admiral Sullivan insisted that humans lead the operation. She doesn't want this to look like an alien attack on humanity. Kevin understood the politics. If alien ships destroyed Jack Morrison, he would become a martyr. Human colonies might rebel against Earth government. The situation could spiral into civil war. Sir, there's something else, Sally continued. We're getting reports that Morrison has new allies. The Reptilian Empire has officially joined his cause, so have the Canine Republic and the Feline Alliance. Intelligence suggests he might have support from over 20 species. This was worse than Kevin had expected. Jack wasn't just leading a human rebellion anymore. He was building a coalition of species that opposed the Galactic Council. The war was becoming much larger than anyone had planned. The task force departed 3 days later. Their destination was the Proxima Junction, a major trade hub where Morrison's fleet had been spotted. Intelligence suggested he was planning to attack Cosmic Confederacy shipping lanes in the area during the journey. Kevin tried to contact Jack directly. Maybe they could settle this without more bloodshed. Maybe his old friend would listen to reason. Jack, this is Kevin Torres. I know you can hear this transmission. We need to talk. The response came 12 hours later. Jack's voice was calm, but Kevin could hear the steel underneath. Hello, Kevin. I wondered when they would send you after me. Jack, it doesn't have to be this way. Come back to Earth. Face trial. I'll speak for you. The court will understand what you've been through. There was a long pause. When Jack spoke again, his voice was different, harder. Kevin, do you know what happened to the survivors from the Harmony? The ones we rescued? They're receiving medical treatment. They're safe. Safe. Jack laughed bitterly. 12 of them committed suicide rather than live with their memories. 3 others are in psychiatric hospitals, completely broken. The little girl I tried to save? She died screaming from the infections the Zephyrians gave her. Kevin felt sick. He hadn't known about the suicides. Earth Command had kept that information classified. Jack, I'm sorry, but you can't solve this with more killing, can't I? Since I started my campaign, attacks on human colonies have dropped by 70%. Alien species that used to raid our shipping lanes now go around human space. Species that used to ignore our diplomatic protests now listen carefully to what we say. You've also started a war that could destroy both humans and aliens. No, Kevin, I've ended a war that was already being fought against us. The difference is that now we're winning. The transmission ended. Kevin stared at the communication panel for a long time. His friend was gone. The man he had known at the academy had been replaced by something else. Something dangerous. 2 days later, the task force reached Proxima Junction. They found Morrison's fleet waiting for them. Kevin had expected to face maybe 30 or 40 ships. Instead, he found himself looking at over 100 vessels. Human ships flew alongside reptilian warships, canine fighters, and feline destroyers. Species that had been enemies for centuries were now working together under Jack Morrison's command. "This is Admiral Torres to all task force vessels," Kevin announced. "We are here to arrest Jack Morrison and his accomplices. Anyone who surrenders will be treated according to galactic law." Jack's response was broadcast on all frequencies. "Kevin, you're flying with the same aliens who tortured our people. You're working with the Zephyrians who cut up children for fun. You're allied with the Ethereals who think humans should be slaves. How does that feel?" Kevin activated his private communication channel. "Jack, these aliens are not our enemies. Most species in the galaxy want peace. Most species in the galaxy want to use us. They want our resources, our technology, our people. The only reason they're calling for peace now is because they're afraid of what we've become." "And what have we become, Jack?" "Something they should have been afraid of from the beginning." The battle began with the Ethereal Collective's mine ships attempting to take control of Morrison's fleet. The Ethereals were the galaxy's most powerful psychic species. They could control the thoughts of most other beings, forcing them to surrender without firing a shot, but something went wrong. The psychic attacks that should have paralyzed Morrison's forces seemed to have no effect. Human ships continued to maneuver and fight. Allied alien vessels showed no signs of mental control. Kevin quickly realized what had happened. Morrison had recruited humans with natural psychic immunity to serve as pilots and commanders. The ethereal weapons were useless against them. "All ships, fall back to defensive positions," Kevin ordered. "The psychic attack has failed." But Morrison wasn't content to just defend. His fleet immediately went on the attack, using tactics that no military academy had ever taught. Human ships coordinated perfectly with their alien allies, creating a combined fighting force that moved like a single organism. The battle raged for 6 hours. Kevin watched in horror as the largest military force in galactic history was systematically destroyed by Morrison's smaller fleet. The aliens had superior technology, but they couldn't match the ferocity and coordination of Morrison's forces. Captain Ryan Miller, commanding the human cruiser U-Ice Retribution, broke through the task force's defensive line. His ship was badly damaged, engines failing, weapons overloaded. But instead of retreating, he aimed his vessel directly at the task force flagship. "This is Captain Miller to all ships," he broadcast. "Tell the galaxy that humanity remembers every insult, every attack, every drop of human blood that has been spilled. We are coming for all of you." The Retribution rammed into the Galactic Council flagship, destroying both vessels in a massive explosion. The blast was so powerful that it damaged several nearby ships. Kevin stared at the expanding fireball where his command ship had been. Ryan Miller had been a good officer, a decent man with a wife and children back on Earth. Now he was dead, having thrown his life away in a gesture of defiance. "Kevin, are you receiving this?" Jack's voice came through the communication system. "I'm here, Jack. Look around you. Look at what's left of your task force. This is what happens when the galaxy tries to stop us." Kevin looked at his tactical display. Out of 200 ships, fewer than 50 were still capable of fighting. The most powerful military force ever assembled had been broken in a single battle. "Surrender, Kevin. Order your ships to stand down. I don't want to kill any more humans today." Kevin wanted to keep fighting. His training told him to continue the battle until the end. But his conscience told him that he was responsible for the lives of his remaining crews. "All task force vessels, this is Admiral Torres. Cease fire and prepare to withdraw." "Kevin?" Jack's voice was gentler now, almost like the old friend Kevin remembered. "I want you to take a message back to Earth Command. Tell them that this war is over. We've won. The galaxy now understands that humanity cannot be controlled or conquered. And what happens next? Next, we build something better. A galaxy where humans and our allies are treated with respect. Where species negotiate as equals instead of predator and prey. Where children can grow up without fear of being kidnapped for experiments. The surviving task force ships began their withdrawal. As they left the Proxima Junction, Kevin could see Morrison's fleet already moving to their next objective. Intelligence suggested they were heading for the ethereal homeworld. "Sir," reported Sally Newton, "we're receiving communications from Earth Command. Admiral Sullivan wants a full report." Kevin looked at the tactical display one more time. The debris field from the battle stretched for millions of kilometers. Hundreds of ships had been destroyed. Thousands of beings were dead. The Galactic Council's authority had been broken in a single afternoon. "Tell Admiral Sullivan that the Morrison problem is bigger than we thought. Tell her that Jack Morrison isn't just leading a human rebellion. He's leading a revolution that spans half the galaxy." "Sir, what about our mission?" "We were supposed to stop Morrison," Kevin laughed bitterly. "Sally, we just learned something important. Jack Morrison can't be stopped. He can only be survived." As the task force limped back toward Earth, Kevin thought about his old friend. The Jack Morrison he had known was dead, killed somewhere between the Academy and the horrors of the Harmony. In his place was something new. Something that aliens feared and humans followed. 5 years had passed since the Harmony incident. Jack Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UES Humanity's Will, watching the stars through the massive viewing window. The ship was the largest vessel ever built by humans, armed with weapons that could destroy entire fleets and protected by shields that had never been breached. At 40 years old, Jack looked much older than his age. His hair had turned gray, and deep lines marked his face. The weight of leading humanity's war for respect had changed him in ways that went beyond physical appearance. He had become something that even he sometimes didn't recognize. "Sir, we're receiving surrender terms from the Zephyrian Empire," reported Commander Sally Newton, who had joined Jack's cause after the Proxima Junction battle. "They're offering full reparations for the Harmony incident and agreeing to turn over their entire leadership for trial by human courts." Jack nodded but didn't smile. The Zephyrian surrender was just the latest in a series of alien capitulations. Over the past year, 17 different species had formally apologized for their treatment of humans and agreed to new treaties that gave humanity equal status in galactic affairs. "What about the medical research facilities?" Jack asked. "They're offering to destroy all of them and turn over their complete research files. They're also agreeing to allow human inspectors full access to their territory." Jack had been waiting for this moment for 5 years. The species that had tortured human prisoners were finally admitting their crimes and offering to make amends. But instead of satisfaction, he felt only emptiness. "Send word to Admiral Sullivan," Jack said. "Tell her that Phase 1 is complete. The galaxy now understands that humanity is not to be trifled with." Sally looked at him with concern. "Sir, what's Phase 2? Jack was quiet for a long moment. "Phase 2 is figuring out what we do now that everyone is afraid of us." The transformation of galactic politics had been complete and swift. The old Galactic Council had collapsed after the Proxima Junction battle. In its place, a new organization had formed, the Galactic Federation, with humanity as one of its founding members and Jack Morrison as its first military commander. The Federation was different from the old Council. Instead of powerful species ruling over weaker ones, all members had equal votes. Disputes were settled through negotiation and compromise, not through threats and intimidation. Trade agreements were fair to all parties. Military action required unanimous consent. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had become the Federation's first human ambassador. She worked tirelessly to build bridges between species that had been enemies for centuries. Her office on the neutral world of New Concordia was always busy with alien diplomats seeking to understand the new galactic order. "Jack, you need to see this," Elena said during one of their regular video conferences. She held up a datapad. showing statistics from across human space. Attacks on human colonies have dropped to zero. Trade with alien species has increased by 400%. Human exploration ships are being welcomed in systems that used to shoot at us on sight. Jack studied the numbers. By every measure, humanity was safer and more prosperous than ever. Before, human children could grow up without fear of alien attacks. Human traders could travel the galaxy without worrying about pirates or slavers. Human diplomats were treated with respect and listened to with attention. We won, Jack, Elena continued. We achieved everything we set out to accomplish. Our people are safe. The galaxy respects us. Maybe it's time to step back and let others handle the day-to-day politics, but Jack couldn't step back. He had become too important to the new order, too feared by potential enemies, too necessary for maintaining the peace that humanity had won through blood and fire. Elena, yesterday I received intelligence reports about 3 different species that are secretly building new weapons. The Crystalline Empire is developing something they call a planet killer. The Voidwalkers are experimenting with dimensional warfare. The Machine Collective is creating artificial intelligence that could threaten all organic life. Elena frowned. Those are just research projects. None of those species have shown any hostility toward humans. They're not hostile yet. But what happens when they decide that humans have become too powerful? What happens when they develop weapons that can threaten Earth itself? This was the burden that Jack carried now. He had become the guardian not just of humanity, but of the peace that humanity had created. Every potential threat had to be evaluated. Every new weapon had to be monitored. Every sign of alien aggression had to be stopped before it could grow into something dangerous. Commander 6R entered the bridge, his reptilian features showing concern. The former enemy had become one of Jack's most trusted advisors, leading the intelligence network that monitored threats across the galaxy. Jack? We have a problem, 6R reported. Long-range sensors have detected ships coming from the galactic core. Unknown design, unknown technology. They're heading toward inhabited systems. Jack felt a familiar tension in his shoulders. How many ships? Thousands, maybe tens of thousands. They're moving in a coordinated formation, suggesting a unified command structure. Intelligence suggests they might be from a species we've never encountered before. This was what Jack had been preparing for. The galaxy was vast, and humanity had only explored a small portion of it. Somewhere in the darkness between the stars, there were species with technology and intentions that remained unknown. Some might be peaceful. Others might see the Federation as a threat to be eliminated. 6R, send word to all Federation members. Tell them we may be facing a new threat. Begin mobilizing our fleets. Yes, sir. What about the human colonies in the outer systems? Begin evacuation procedures for any world that might be in the path of those ships. I want our people safe before we find out what we're dealing with. Jack walked to his private quarters and activated the secure communication system. The call connected to a small house on Earth, where a woman in her 50s answered. She had Jack's eyes but a much gentler expression. Helen, it's Jack. His sister smiled, but Jack could see the worry in her face. Jack, you look tired. When was the last time you came home? I can't come home, Helen. You know that. There are too many people depending on me. The galaxy won't fall apart if you take a vacation. Jack almost smiled. The galaxy might not, but human safety depends on maintaining the fear factor. If our enemies think I'm getting weak or distracted, they might test our resolve. Helen was quiet for a moment. Jack, I've been watching the news reports. I've seen what you've accomplished. Our people are safer than they've ever been. Maybe it's time to let someone else carry the burden. There is no one else, Helen. I'm the one they fear. I'm the one they respect. If I step down, how long before someone decides to test the new leadership? And what about you? What about your life? You've spent 5 years fighting for humanity. When do you get to live for yourself? Jack looked out at the stars. I gave up my life the day I found those torture chambers on the Harmony. Everything I am now exists to make sure that never happens again. The conversation ended, leaving Jack alone with his thoughts. He had achieved everything he had set out to accomplish. Humanity was respected, feared, and safe. The galaxy operated under rules that protected the innocent and punished the guilty, but the cost had been enormous. Billions of aliens had died in the wars that followed his rise to power. Entire civilizations had been destroyed or fundamentally changed. The old galactic order, with all its flaws, had been replaced by something new and uncertain, and Jack Morrison, the man who had once been a simple naval officer, had become something that even he didn't fully understand. He was a symbol of human strength, a guardian of galactic peace, and a monster in the nightmares of potential enemies. Sally Newton returned to the bridge with new reports. "Sir, the unknown ships have changed course. They're heading directly for Federation space. Intelligence estimates they'll reach our outer worlds in 6 days." Jack nodded. "Signal the fleet. All ships are to assume battle positions. Send a message to Earth Command. We may be facing our greatest challenge yet." As the UES Humanity's Will jumped to hyperspace, carrying Jack toward whatever new threat awaited in the darkness, he recorded a message that would never be sent. "Helen, I want you to know that every human child born today will grow up in a galaxy where our species commands respect. They'll never know the fear that our generation lived with. They'll never wonder if some alien species sees them as prey. That's worth any price I've had to pay." The message was automatically deleted after recording, but the sentiment remained. Jack Morrison had become the guardian of humanity's future, the sword that protected the innocent, and the nightmare that kept potential enemies awake at night. The galaxy had feared Jack Morrison, and they had good reason to. But perhaps in the end, that fear had become the foundation of a better universe. One where strength was respected, weakness was protected, and no species would ever again assume that humans were easy victims. As the unknown ships approached from the galactic core, Jack Morrison prepared for whatever challenge awaited. He had kept his promise to the victims of the Harmony. He had made the galaxy safe for human children. Now he would discover if the universe held threats that even humanity's most feared guardian could not defeat.